Hey guys, how we doing? Very special guest today. We're joined by one of the first coaches I work with, and a coach who's done a hell of a lot in the game. Is Mark Garaway. Gareth, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Absolute pleasure, mate.
Cool. Yeah, as I said, Gareth was 2002. He came to Somerset, and it was a time where I'd done 2 years there. Hadn't enjoyed working with the previous coach before you with the second team. It was a little bit old school and didn't really see the point of my role. But you were someone who came in and invigorated me and pushed me a lot to keep learning and not stay still. And the little partnership we had there for 3 years was I always still look back on is one of my favourites because I think the way we worked the second team and the things we tried to bring in, like first teams weren't doing back then, and it was a great little period.
Well, it was a great time, Juicy, and I think people align, don't they, at certain times. And that was my first coaching job, really, coaching the second team, but also doing the academy at Somerset. So I was very much learning on the job, and my playing experience wasn't particularly extensive at the top level of games. So without being, sounding a little bit rude to myself or to what we tried to do, I was making it up as I went along a little bit. And it just gave us the opportunity to experiment a little bit, which often when you are experimenting, you tend to push the boundaries a little bit more than the normal. And I think that's what we did, and we learned from our mistakes. As much as we did some good stuff, we also made a lot of mistakes and learned from them. And I think that's crucial with playing or coaching, to be brutally honest.
Yeah, 100%. If you don't learn from them and you just sort of idly keep doing the same things without learning, then you're going to go down a bit of a different route. I mean, I remember in the second team, we actually had the cricket system, and
Yeah.
it was unbelievable. Putting in Gareth's on top of Gareth's car with a big bullet thing with a what would you call it, like a winch that we put the camera up on whenever we got to these
Yeah,
outgrounds
yeah,
in case
wasn't
it was.
particularly easy to carry around, was it? I mean, I think my car started off as a normal car and ended up. I certainly wouldn't have been able to get on the Isle of Wight ferry as a normal car by the time we ended up. But it was great though, wasn't it? Because it gave players vision, and I think as much as they feel stuff, it's always good to sort of corroborate your feelings with what you're seeing as well. And it gave us the opportunity to have conversations which weren't, I think you're doing this right or wrong.
Hmm.
Actually, let's have a look at this together and let's have a decent conversation. And I think we saw some pretty accelerated development. This is back in what, 2003, 2002, 2003. I mean, it seems crazy now to be talking about vision being an innovation at the time where it's everywhere now. But it helped the players to move on quickly, and it certainly, I think, it helped us to be able to communicate in a slightly more open rather than direct. You're doing this right, or you're doing that wrong way, and I think they appreciated that.
Yeah, and one of the big things you got them doing in conjunction with all the footage and everything was there was a we'll come on to it in a sec, but a really good crop of young players coming through, all local lads, and they ended up knowing each other's games. So I remember we did team debriefs after game and then working out before a game, which some teams still don't do now. And some second teams still don't have video footage at the games, which I find amazing. But yeah, I remember being part of those meetings and you almost setting it up, sitting back, and then letting the players talk about the other players. So I remember Gazar talking about Woody or Toasty and things like that, and it was brilliant to sit back and they knew each other's games so well that we could have set up in the morning, could have gone, come back at 6, and we know, and it would have rolled easily, wouldn't it?
Well, I think in the end it was like that, wasn't it? It certainly didn't start always like that because
No.
it was a completely different change of culture, and I think we're seeing it more often now, aren't we? But that's something that I've carried through now, and I'm working with kids now around 13, 14 years old, and they're capable of doing exactly those things, Juicy. They get to learn about each other. They get to ask people questions about their game in a really positive and proactive way rather than waiting just for the coaches to speak. So that's something that I think good coaches do really well. And certainly on my journey up through coaching and working with some exceptional coaches, I think the best best ones tend to facilitate rather than bark orders, that is for sure. But no, it was good fun, all of that. And you look at people like Matthew Wood now, who's doing an amazing coaching job up in Nottinghamshire, working in a fantastic environment up there. You know, those were sort of the starting points of his coaching career in some ways, because he was coaching people around him, whether they were more senior players to him or junior players to him. It didn't really matter, because everybody had a voice and opinion. You know, I remember James Hildreth at the age of 19 offering some of the most insightful feedback that some of his teammates probably heard. And you know, I do loads of coach education stuff, as you know now, but when I talk to these great players about who taught them the most, they often say it was the people that sat alongside them rather than the coaches. So if the coaches aren't facilitating that knowledge, then they're probably not going to get the best out of their players.
Yeah, and you see it. It's one of my bugbears with academies now is they're not self-reliant. Like you say, they're waiting to be told what to do, when to do it, like in every aspect, instead of like the blokes as well. They were brilliant. They'd just take each other off, one throw at the other, talk to each other about the game. Now everyone waiting for a coach to come and take and throw balls or feed the machine and then talk to them. It's like, how are you going to actually move forward? You know, if the coach is suddenly not there, what are you going to do? Do nothing for a day? And the whole environment was brilliant.
Yeah, well, I mean, the environments I'm lucky enough to work in now aren't too dissimilar. You know, one of my things that I talk about regularly to the kids is the fact that when they go out on the field, I'm not going to score any runs from. In fact, I've not scored any runs since 1999, and apart from playing against Kent one year, I haven't taken any catches since 1999 either. So it's down to them really, and you know, the more they can take responsibility for their training. It doesn't mean to say that I sit around idly. That isn't the case. But more that I can give them responsibility for their own work and try and bring about that accountability, I think the better prepared they're going to be when they step out in the middle, because it's a lonely place, isn't it? You know, it's a horribly exposing place, and if you're not rigorous or robust enough to be able to deal with that, the failure and you know having a success and hitting the best shot that you've hit all year and then having to refocus, if you're not good at doing that in practice, then it's really difficult to replicate that in a game. So no, I'm a big fan of doing that. And as I say, you know, I've worked with some incredible coaches, and they've all been brilliant. They've all been brilliant at doing exactly that. You know, the quietest ones are often the best, and I'm certainly not a quiet coach. But the ones that sit back and then come in and add real value, probably, you know, you look at somebody like Trevor Bayliss now with England, Duncan Fletcher, who I work with, Andy Flower, who I work with, Gary Kirsten, who I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time with. They're all that type of guy, and you know, they recognise that when you get out in the middle, it's probably the player that has to do all the work. It's not the coach that's sitting down drinking coffee or pressing buttons on a computer.
Definitely. So how you went from doing the second team in the academy at Somerset and then into
Yeah,
the head role. How do you feel you have
yeah.
to change? Did you have to feel you have to change anything about your coaching style or anything going into the first team environment?
Probably needed to a little bit more, maybe. I'm a believer in sticking to your values, and those values that I learned in club cricket on Ventnor on the Isle of Wight are still the ones that I hold today. So I was very keen to keep to those. I didn't want to change myself, because I think players see through that very quickly. You know, in that first team, we had some incredible players. You know, the likes of Marcus Trescothick, Andy Caddick, Graham Smith. You know, previous year we had Ricky Ponting when I was beginning to work a little bit more in that environment, and they see straight through you, don't they? If you're spouting off and changing your philosophy or your values. So I stuck very rigidly to those, and I probably do now. I brought in a few things which, because I think you need to give them something. I mean, I can remember Trez saying to me, you know, what are you going to teach us? Which I thought was a really interesting question to ask. And so my things that I thought I could help out with really were fielding. We needed to get better at fielding. We needed to get better tactically. And I saw the T20 format as the best opportunity to do that, because I didn't think that everybody took it seriously at that time. And I can remember saying to you that when I was offered the job, which was actually ironically about a week after you left the club, bizarrely, I remember us having a conversation, and I said to you, I'd be really surprised if we didn't win the T20 within 3 years, just purely because I watched the games from the stands as a supporter, because we'd often take the academy kids into the stands and get them to watch the game from there. And I used to look at it and go, people are playing stupid cricket here. They're not getting this right. There's so much space that can be exploited. There's so many different deliveries that can be looked at. There's so many places that specialist fielders can be deployed at different parts of the game. And for me, I felt that was my best chance of winning a competition and doing really well in a competition. And Somerset hadn't been out the group stages in the first 2 years of it. So it was an easy win, really, in some regards. We got out of the group stage, and then, we got lucky in a game that you were at, actually, if I remember rightly, in a quarter final, and then sort of the rest is history, really. But yeah, I went in there with my values. I said fielding, I said tactics. I didn't try and change anybody's game technically too much because, I think I'd have been pushed back a little bit on that. No, I mean, I look back at it very fondly, I have to say. And it went really quickly, from being given the job to then moving into England was a whirlwind, really, for me.
So, but to win that T20 in 2005 must have been. I mean, I remember watching it on TV, and obviously that was the year I'd left, and been so proud to see the young lads coming through, in knowing sort of you and the environment you were creating there. It was brilliant to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you look back on that tournament, Matt Wood. I think he was the third top run scorer in the whole tournament. Graham Smith was immense. I mean, let's take it away. I did a couple of reasonable things, and players played absolutely brilliantly in that tournament. But Graham Smith's leadership throughout not just that tournament, but in his 3 months at the club was off the charts, And I love working with him. We got on really well. We lived around the corner from each other. Most of our selection meetings were held on the sofa over a beer every night. And it worked fantastic. We had a lot of fun, but we were very clear in what we wanted to do, and we achieved some good things together. It was really cool.
So then you got the gig with England. So what was the official role? Assistant coach and analyst?
Yeah, it was. So assistant coach and analyst, and that was back in the days where an analyst was more in charge of vision and tactics and data mining and all of that. And it was timely. The game was probably beginning to change in terms of statistics, and that really isn't my bag. It took me 3 goes to get my GCSE maths, so I wasn't really looking to get my head stuck into numbers too much. But my aim was to help a bowler at the end of his mark to have a really good idea of what the best form of attack against any batter was, and make sure that a batter, when they first face a bowler, had real clarity in what they were going to try and do. And I didn't go too far away from that the whole time I was there. It was really well received by Duncan Fletcher, who I had no relationship with before. I think I've met him twice before. He wasn't even at my interview, which I still find a little bit bizarre. But, and I went into the environment and we just seemed to click. And Michael Vaughan was the captain at the time. And we had a little bit of time before he got injured, and we seemed to click. And it was a fantastic time for me. I look back on that very, very fondly as a time, particularly with Fletch. I learned a lot through Peter Moores, and then I worked a little bit with Andy Flower, and you could see that the connection that he and Andrew Strauss had was very similar to the connection that Duncan Fletcher and Michael Vaughan had. And to me, going back to Graham Smith at Somerset, you can be as good a coach as you want, but if you haven't got that captain-coach partnership working well together, then unfortunately you're not going to achieve very much.
Yeah, because we've both seen sometimes where, how can I put this, coaches want a puppet for them rather than someone who's going to push back and say, no, I don't like it, and then bounce off each other. And I think, like you said, when you've got two people getting on, but not with exactly the same ideas, pushing each other, that's when almost the magic starts to happen a little bit.
Definitely. And looking, Peter Moores is probably the best coach I've ever worked with. He's absolutely magnificent. But he talks about his most successful time in county cricket was down at Sussex, and he had Chris Adams with him. Now, the two of them were so passionate, they would go against each other quite a lot. And then when Mushtaq Ahmed came and worked with England, he was telling me what his role was to basically be the peacemaker between the two. They both got on brilliantly, but obviously their views would clash every now and again. And then Mushy would come in and just sort of sweep underneath and get them back on track. But you need to have that sort of open relationship. And I'm completely with you. And I did a little bit of work for the ICC before the 2011 World Cup, which was in India. I was with Ireland, and we happened to be England actually in 2011, which was absolutely hilarious in some ways, but fantastic for the country of Ireland. And it was nice shaking KP's hand the next day after we'd won. And I was doing a little bit of work, and they asked me to predict who was going to win the World Cup, and I said India will win it, not just because their home advantage, which I actually thought was an advantage, but also a disadvantage through expectation. But the strength of Dhoni and Kirsten as a partnership was far stronger than anybody else within that tournament. And for me, that's the thing that players look up to. If there's any uncertainty in that leadership pairing, then it often manifests itself in poor performance.
Mm. Let's talk about going into England. You went into the side just after they'd won the 2005 Ashes and everything really kicked off. So what was it? What were they like as a team to try and sort of ingratiate yourself with? And because obviously there was a couple of egos in there. But did you find it fairly easy, or was it tough? Did they take you in straight away?
I don't think anybody should ever take you in straight away. I think you need to earn a little bit of the right, I suppose. And again, authenticity, I think, is crucial. So I didn't try and do anything other than what I had previously, really. And I just tried to be true to myself. And I think that's what got me on side with key people straight away, is that I was just being real, and when people questioned my background in terms of playing and all of that sort of stuff, it didn't really bother me too much, because I understood that I didn't play very much. I understood where my roots were, and ultimately everybody starts off as a club cricketer, which is effectively what I was. So that was always my start. And you haven't played, yeah, I know, but where did you start playing your cricket? Well, it was at the club. Well, yeah, we're on the same path then, so don't worry about that. And that's pretty much how it works. So I got on really well with all of the players, but in particular, I think it helps when two or three of the main players really start to gravitate towards you. So Michael Vaughan was crucial within that. Andrew Strauss was crucial within that. I had a very good relationship with KP. We used to work every day. I'd be his throwdown man, no more than that. He might call me his coach sometimes, but really I was a bloke that checked balls, and I learned as much from him, probably more than he learned from me. And then Paul Collingwood was another really good person for me to knock around with, and I became sort of friends with them, really, those sort of guys, and that really helped. And then of course there was that bit of transition, so you had the likes of Jimmy Anderson coming into the side, who was fantastic, and my role with him was to help him to become the fielder that we've seen over the years, which is amazing, because he was just a bowler at the time. Stuart Broad came into a setup, and again, one of the most competitive people ever, that just wanted to get any sort of advantage that he could, and his fielding went through the roof. So I did more and more fielding with people with Fletch as time went on, and that really helped me as well. So I didn't have I used to have some tough conversations with people like Freddie and myself used to have some really tough conversations, because I used to talk to him about why he doesn't take wickets more frequently and at a better average in Test cricket, because he was amazing. He was one of the best bowlers I've ever seen. And interesting to see that stat that came out the other day about pace of bowlers and spells after Mark Wood's spell in the West Indies. And Fred was in 2 of the top 5 or something like that, and he was frightening. But he used to hit the stumps in Test match cricket. So we used to have some really good rucks, proper rucks, where I'd back it up with stats. But even to this day, because I still do a little bit of work with his sons every now and again, it's fantastic to continue those conversations, because he used to, I think, average 21 with the ball in one-day international cricket, where of course the stumps come into play more, and he ended up bowling lots and lots of overs to get his wickets, which hurt his body in Test match cricket. And I just wanted to not see him hurt his body quite so much, to be honest. But so you have to have those conversations. KP I used to fall out with on a regular basis, but one of the best things about him is he'd never hold a grudge. He'd sleep on it, he'd come back and he'd go, "I've thought about what you said. I think you're right on that and that, but I'm still right on that." And as long as the thing that he was right on wasn't important, I was quite happy with that. And that's the way that it works, because the difference, I think, between county cricket and international cricket is you basically live together in international cricket for 10, 11 months a year. Whereas in county cricket, you do have those natural breaks when you go home for a home game, because every game is away from home effectively. Even when you're playing within England, you're always away from your base. You don't get to go back to your own home, the sanctuary of your own home, and put your feet up. You're always sort of on it. So that's the difference. International cricket to county cricket for me is that you're always on top of each other. You've got to find ways of getting on, which we do in the main. But also the fact that everything is under such pressure. Can you remember how many people come along to county 4-day matches, and then all of a sudden you're turning up at the MCG, or you're turning up in Kolkata or wherever the case may be, and you've got nearly 100,000 people. It's completely different. You've got 450 people in the media following you around, following every single move, staying in the same hotels. It's very different. The game's the same. Speeds up a little bit in Test match cricket, admittedly, or international cricket, but the game's the same. But the pressures are very different, and you just have to adapt and find a way through. But you're almost like a family without being a family, if that makes sense, in international cricket. So your
Yeah.
relationships with people is really crucial, and largely I got that right. There's probably a few people that would disagree with that, but that's fine.
There's always people that disagree. Jesus, we don't speak to many people I used to shout at, but they're all gone now, mate. So you took this, and now you're is it director of sport at Millfield?
No, I wouldn't be. I'm not good enough to do that by any stretch of imagination at our place. I'm director of cricket. Director of sport in Millfield is an incredibly big job. I mean, it's almost like being the head of the British Olympic Association, I think, down here, because we've got 29 sports. And as much as I love doing bits and bobs, working in rugby, and I've done a bit at school, but also done a bit in some of the Premiership clubs around the country. My main thing is cricket, and to be honest, it's so busy with it at Millfield that I don't get time to do too much else outside of cricket. So it's a great environment for me to be in, and we've got some really cool players, but more importantly than that, we've got lots of people that want to play cricket. We've got over 350 people playing cricket every year. We've got a girls program that's gone from having 7 people in it when I got there in 2012 to now having 75 in it. We've got more teams than we can poke a stick at, and it's a top place to be. So I'm very, very lucky in that respect. I enjoy driving into work every morning, that is for sure.
It's always a bonus. Now, for me, it's one of the things that cricket doesn't do well is, and I think it's a bit of ego as well from a lot of coaches I've seen, is coaches want to be in a county or with an international team, with the first team, and always be there and be seen, where we need to have more experience in the best coaches like yourselves working with these kids coming through. And we're thinking not just technically and tactically, but physically, because they get into 15, 16, and we're getting kids on the academy, and they just can't move anymore. So we're having to take a couple of years and try and say to the coaches, you can't implement any change on this kid because the poor sod cannot move. He cannot do it. You can say you want to get a longer delivery stride and you want his front arm here and there, but he can't do anything with it. So the more you talk to him, he's just going to look at you and say, oh, I'm trying, but I can't do it. So I think there needs to be some sort of shift to get more good people working with the younger players. Otherwise, we're going to probably miss a generation.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal model for me, Juicy, is if you think about player development models, they work in a triangle, like a pyramid, don't they? You've got a big base, and up at the top, you've got the few that go on to play for an international side, like in England or Australia or whatever the case may be. And that's the same in boys and girls cricket. It's no different in either of those. The ideal model, and it's one that's never going to happen in any sport, but the ideal model is if the coach development model actually is an inverted one. So you've got the best coaches working with at the time where they're the most sort of malleable and the most able to make a bigger accelerated change within their game or their physicality, as you talk about. And I think, the challenge with that is money, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's the finances that need to go into the top end of a game, which naturally attract your best people to go up in there. I mean, I was lucky. I mean, one of the reasons why I want to do what I'm doing now so much is because I had an unbelievably early taste of the stuff that we've just talked about. I walked into the Somerset job at 26. I made a decision to come out of playing so I could go into into coaching. And I was 26, 27 when I arrived at Somerset. Equally, I was 30 when we won the T20. I mean, it's I had all of that stuff back then. So now, and I miss it because I miss the competition, I miss the people. But ultimately, everything that's replaced that is pretty cool. I get to see people really develop. And at times in the international game, you're managing egos, as you talked about. Here, yeah, there's some egos, but they're not the biggest ones I've ever managed as yet. That is for sure. And you can help develop people really quickly, and that's been the pleasing thing about Millfield, has been having the opportunity to work with people that are starting the game for the first time, kids that are trying to get onto academies, kids that are getting into international under-19 teams, or the Young Lions, as we've had 2 away in the last few weeks. We've had 15 kids away overseas playing cricket over this half term, which is just off the charts, really. That's a bit that I like now. But to me, we've got more coaches. I mean, you look at Steph, the guy that you've known for a million years, and you've worked with on this project of yours. He's a fantastic coach, and he's doing some really good stuff down at Wellington. But there's good coaches all over the place. I walk in the cricket grounds around the country against coaches that have played Test match cricket. I've never done that, but it's great fun. So we have got good people in there. I think generally, what we need to do is probably link up the public schools, the independent schools, with the counties a little bit better. And there's a few counties that are doing that very well at the moment. And I think they're reaping the rewards in terms of the players that they're coming through, one of which being your county. You look at the throughput into your professional staff, the throughput into the England Young Lions teams over the years. And that's an example of how you can link it all up together, because that's what we need to do.
Definitely. Well, mate, this has been fantastic. It's been good to go down memory lane a little bit as well. Get a bit misty-eyed about the old Somerset days. It was almost a shame because obviously we both left it in those good crop of youngsters who, we both sort of envisaged that they would go on and almost get into the Somerset teams together and play for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Almost they all went their separate ways after you left. So it's almost a shame that happened, but can't do anything about that now, can we?
Well, I mean, it's a romantic view that we probably had there, and of course the need to win. And once they'd tasted success in 2005, and they wanted more of it, and it's not easy with a young group of players to win after winning, is it? It's not, and I think Andy Hurry and Brian Rose found that was the case, so they needed to win a bit more, and they went down that route. And we see that all the time, don't we? That's the challenge between development and winning a lot of the time. And me as a coach, as much as I've been lucky enough to work in the environments where it is a win-win thing, to me it's always been about how can we develop that player a little bit more? How can we develop this player a little bit more? So in some ways, I've probably ended up in the right environment to work.
No, it's been brilliant. And I remember one more story when I think it was 2003 or 4 when New Zealand were playing were playing us at the county ground, and we didn't have a second team game, so we were there. And you just took a couple, I think it was Wes and someone else, and you just said to him, just watch Stephen Fleming and how he captains and what he does. And it was amazing that you just took the time with these 2 youngsters to watch and think outside the box, see what he was the best captain in the world at the time.
It's incredible.
The stuff they got from that, and you were always thinking, which was good because we never could just relax. I think we're there because you challenge us in one way or bollock us or do something to keep us going, which is brilliant. So, yeah, mate, thank you so much.
We had a couple of nights out to make up for that, though, Jeezy, didn't we? So it was fun.
I won't talk about them. But, mate, thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us. And all the best for this season with Millfield.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks very much.
Cheers, mate.